But before we go with our first speaker, I've been asked to give some introductory remarks to today. And I want to focus on three specific words and concepts around today's conference, which is Pride in Diversity, supporting LGBT colleagues at work. And some of those issues that I want to raise, I'm sure will probably come out throughout the day in people's various presentations. But some of those key words I want to start off with and for people to think about over the course of the day. Being in a workplace and being supported is key to psychological safety. If you are openly out as LGBTQ+ at your workplace, we know that the statistics and the evidence says that you're more likely to be happy, you're more likely to be more productive, and you're more likely to be secure in being in the workplace, being your authentic self. Now, I'm sure that we all want to have that utopian environment, but as we all know, we aren't there yet. And that's why having conferences like today, exploring how we can enable people to be their most authentic selves, and also to provide that psychological safety so people can be open about whether they're from the LGBTQ+ community, whether they may have conditions, may have mental health difficulties, may have HIV, for instance, but be open about it and be able to have that conversation in a workplace where you know that people will respect you for who you are and treat you in the way that you wish to be respected. That's really crucial. And I hope today we will actually have a series of examples and discussions where people have been able to do that in their workplace. And that's what we would like all workplaces to be able to facilitate, to be able to allow people to be their authentic selves. Now, when talking about authenticity, we also talk about intersectionality. And we know that intersectionality, though in the diversity and inclusion sphere, it's a relatively new terminology, it's actually been around for quite some time. And it's really key in understanding that all of us have multiple identities. We don't fit into one box. We may be from the LGBTQ+ community. We may have a different ethnic background. We may have a disability. We may have a different faith or no faith. And all those things mean that we have multiple identities. Bringing all those multiple identities to the office means that understanding intersectionality is really critical, and bringing all those different aspects of one's life in order to be your authentic self. So hopefully today we will explore also how the concept around inclusion in the workplace, accepting people for who they are and respecting how you treat people who they are, at the same time as understanding perhaps some newer terminology which may not be comfortable for everyone, but actually sometimes you have to be uncomfortable to have to learn. And that's how I always treat this issue, whereby we educate others and we try and ensure that learning is part of the program, that inclusive leadership, inclusive authenticity in the workplace is something that, from an E&I perspective, the Employers Network for Equality and Inclusion, for who I work for, is the standout way of trying to ensure that that is what the workplace consists of. And we know from so far that we can ascertain that the better the inclusivity in the workplace, the more likely the productive employees, their happiness and their productivity for the organizations that we work for. And that leads us on to the other terminology, which is around belonging. Belonging is not just a concept around sort of community is also belonging in a workplace that you feel comfortable. And these terminologies around inclusion, inclusivity, intersectionality, belonging, all form part of this insurance of being psychologically safe in the workplace. Now, over the course of the time, we all know that the workplace has changed. We've had a insurance that there are laws to protect people with the protected characteristics that we have in our Equality Act. But we also know that there are other characteristics which are not covered in there, but they're also part of the inclusion and diversity space. And the workplace is very much key to having that environment where some of those other characteristics around social inclusion, around flexibility and agile working, and understanding why inclusive leadership and conscious inclusion training is really important. Because all those things come together to ensure that the environment that we work in is safe and secure for everyone. And I do mean everyone. There isn't there shouldn't be situations where people are vulnerable, are unaccepted, or are treated in a less respectful manner in the workplace for whoever they are. And we, on this journey of inclusion and diversity, need to get to a point where we are able to ensure that everyone that comes to work feels safe, can be their authentic selves, can be included in everything we do. There is no things that are done in the workplace which marginalize or disadvantage or put people in a place where they're not comfortable. And that's what we have to work towards. And today's part of that is pushing forward the aspect of being LGBTQ+ in the workplace. And that's what I look forward to hearing from our various speakers today, who are going to give us their experiences, their background knowledge, their different spectrum on the LGBTQ+ spectrum of life experience. And the lived experience is really critical here. You can obviously be an ally to all the LGBTQ+ community, and you can obviously learn and be supportive. But the lived experience and having to go through those awkward conversations, those coming out conversations that happen every time you go to a new job, you meet a new group of friends, you meet different people from the community, you have to do that every time. And many people don't realize that can actually be quite a traumatic experience. For those of us who have come out at work and had no issues at all, that's great. But we know that actually 2/3 of young people who come out at university go back into the closet in the workplace because they are frightened. They are scared that perhaps if they show what their sexuality is or be very open about it, that they may not get the role that they're looking for. And we need to change that. That is something that is unacceptable. If people come out and are open and authentic about themselves at university, there is no reason why they should not be able to do the same in the workplace. And because we know that statistic, we know that there is a lot more work to do to ensure that that journey of coming out doesn't go backwards or progresses backwards when people go from university to their first workplace. I can say from my own experience that I was very lucky. In my first job back in 2001, it is 20 years this October since I came to London, I was able to come out the first week in my job at the translation company that I worked for. And I'm glad to say that in 2017, I was able to do exactly the same for ENEI at the Employers Network for Equality and Inclusion. And both of those were understood, inclusive, and I never look back on it. That's not to say other jobs that I've had in that intervening period Coming out was difficult. I received homophobic abuse. I received comments and conversations that I wouldn't want to repeat on this event. And therefore, I know that even though I've had good experiences, I've also had bad experiences too. And if bad experiences keep happening to the younger generation just starting out in their careers, we need to do something more to ensure that the workplace is as safe and as secure as it possibly can be, and to register that we are not there yet. And one of those we are not there yet conversations is having that ability to be open and candid when you first start a job or when you first go to an interview. You don't need to be hiding yourself, because generally hiding yourself only affects you in a bad way. It generally means you are hiding an aspect, and that generally affects your mental health. And we know mental health over the past 18 months has been stretched for everyone. We've had quite a difficult period of time to come through this pandemic, and mental health has been high on the chart, but it's even higher on the chart for people from an LGBTQ plus disposition. And I think we have to realize that and make sure that going forward into the workplace going forward, that there are going to be lots of challenges around people's mental health following the pandemic. And that's why being able to be your authentic self at work and being happy and secure in doing that is extremely important. And hoping that people have understood why that is so important, I think that's what hopefully we will get out of today's individual speakers who can talk about why their authenticity in the workplace and their experiences have given them that ability to be open, to be courageous, whatever the word you want to use, but to be able to be that person that you seek to be in the workplace, being happy, being felt included, and belonging to the organization that you work for, and you know that the organization that you are working for has your back, has the understanding that you will be there for them and ensure their safety and security with their authentic self in the process. Now, I'm conscious that we're coming up to our first speaker, so I don't want to preface my remarks much further, but I'm hoping that you'll have a good conference and you'll all be able to take away some learnings from this. I want to reiterate again, please ask questions of our speakers, because the more questions we have, the more interactive and the more interesting those conversations can be. And that is really, really important.